Welcome to Blue Grit Radio, the podcast that explores making better cops for a better community. I'm your host, Eric Tung. I've been an active police officer since 2007. We will dive into the aspects of police culture, health and wellness, leadership, and mindset. You'll hear from experts not only from policing, but all industries as they relate to being our best with purpose, passion, and positivity. Join me as we share stories, lessons, and advice so we can all be better for ourselves, our teams, our families, and our communities.
As I was saying, I've noticed in the last few years in law enforcement, there's this growing trend of when you go to calls, you see a lot of cops that are, I know the PC way is saying obese, but they're fat.
Yeah.
And they have this mentality that's so negative, and they don't feel like they don't have to do anything anymore. And the guys that are trying to do the job and do it outside, off duty, staying in shape and eating the right things, those guys are kind of portrayed as, like we said, meatheads, like you're dumb or you can't do the job. And, that's what I've seen. And I think we need to get to a point where this job is about protecting people, and you have to be at your utmost fittest. What I always felt. And, that not only shows that you care about yourself, but also shows you care about the community.
Yeah.
And,
that's huge. So we just jumped into it. And so I think I'm going to keep it that way for the audience. And
sure,
if you're curious, it's because we started this pre-recording conversation where, I'm here with Rod Wisser, behind the drive on Instagram. So it's behind_the_drive. And we're talking about this critical conversation of first responder fitness, this critical issue with cops being out of shape, not being able to take care of the job at its base level. And so this is not to cast judgment, this is not to cast blame, but this is talking about how we can get better and where we should be. And so when we were talking, I just told Rod, hey man, I'm gonna hit the record because I want you to say exactly what you just said. And so that's the delayed introduction, but thanks for joining me, man. And I'm glad we're going to be talking about this stuff.
Thank you, Eric. I really appreciate it. And thanks for your time, man. It means a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
You got a good thing going on, and you're doing some good things. It's going to make a difference.
Appreciate it, man. You were focused so much on, I like to say the low hanging fruit, but I understand it is a jump for people. And so at the risk of saying that, I don't want it to be intimidating, and it can seem, right? It can seem that way. You got Rod. Look up his Instagram as you're listening. You're a big dude. You look like no joke. I wouldn't mess around with you on the street, that's for certain, or on the mat or whatever, right? And so
officer presence.
Yeah, that's the best way, officer presence. And so I remember being a young guy on the job, and I was certainly not a big guy. I'm certainly not very big now. That was one thing where I was like, man, I'm not very big. I should put on some mass. And I didn't go about it in the best ways initially until I got a little bit smarter and just a little bit more researched and experience is everything, right? The first thing is you just got to get in and just start eating better, and then you figure out what's working better for you. So,
I heard a great line. I think it was from Andy Frisella. He's a CEO of First Form. He said that imperfect action is better than doing nothing perfectly. And you gotta create the process. You gotta start. I don't care if it's, down here in South Bend, Indiana, McDonald's gives us free food, and a lot of guys unfortunately take advantage of it. And McDonald's
I do love a free meal, though.
Oh yes, so do I. But when you go to McDonald's, there are some things from the menu you can pick from that aren't going to make you feel so sluggish and make you feel, basically what I call comatose in your car. Because that's the worst feeling is if you work midnights, 5:30 in the morning, you get that call of a car on the tracks running. We all know what that is, probably a DUI. A domestic in progress, and you've been sitting there for 3 hours comatose. It's not a good feeling. One of the posts I made was 80% of FBI did the study. 80% of cops right now in this country are obese. So that means 8 out of 10 police officers, when they show up, are basically not in the good health, which is alarming. Because when you go from 0 to 100 on calls, it creates a catabolic response in your body.
Hmm.
which can only be, bad for it. And if you're not trained properly with exercise and pushing yourself, eating right, your body's going to perceive that as a threat, and it can be harmful for your body.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. And then so for those that are like, man, Rod just used a $5 word. Yeah, catabolic. We're just talking about it's tearing you down, right?
Yes,
And stress is
catabolic,
tearing you
yeah.
down. Yeah,
Hmm.
everything, and that compounds, right? So we're talking about like literally the nature of the job is stressful calls that's wearing down on you, your nervous system, poor sleep habits as a result of the shift work and the stress, and so it's all mounting. And so when I say low hanging fruit, that's where I'm saying, hey, this is the thing that we can control probably the easiest. And again, if you have a lot of work to do, it is a big jump. But right, it's focusing on the little things, and that's what we're going to
Yes.
get into later in the episode.
Hmm.
But take it from me, someone that has gone on and off of eating habits and poor eating habits and great eating habits and everything in between. That is the thing that you can make the decision the night prior or the day of or the day you go grocery shopping or meal
Yeah.
prepping rather than sleep. Like sleep was definitely much more difficult for me to combat, and it goes in waves, right? So again,
Yes.
you can control how much you move around, you can control what you put in your body.
Hmm. Yeah, Eric, that's a great point. We have, I like to say we all have a piece of paper and a pen. You can write down your daily plan of what you can do. I remember working midnights. This is just from my experience. I'd come home, I'd have to take the kids to school or whatever. I'd probably get to bed probably about 8:30 and wake up at 2:30. So I always try to get some type of like 6 hours sleep at least. And then at that point, I had a plan of action of what I had to do up until 9:30, when basically I was signing in. It's either making my food, going to the gym. Um, if I had part-time jobs I had to get to, when I woke up, I I knew beforehand the night before maybe I'll get couple Cliff Bars, or buddy to pick up those Metrics bars.
Hmm.
Something that was healthful for your body. That's not going to be, when you wake up and like, oh, let me grab whatever, let me grab a donut or some type of pastry, which unfortunately a lot of guys do. You got to have a plan. You got to put something in action, and the daily to do list. Would it be 5 or 6 things that you're going to do? As you keep doing it, it becomes part of you. It becomes habit. I know for a lot of people, maybe listening to this, they're like, "Gee, where do I start? I got to write a list." Just start with that one thing. When I wake up,
Hmm.
I'm going to drink some water. You know what? I'm going to walk for 30 minutes. Maybe do some fasted cardio. Whenever you do something positive, it just seems like it starts not a downward spiral, but it
A trickle
creates
down.
trickle down, correct.
Yeah.
Something where, you start something positive, and you get to the point where, man, I want to do some more. I did this, I accomplished this, I want to do some more. And you end up enjoying trying to push yourself and become more fit and basically more organized.
Yeah, I love that, man. And I'm going to connect what you just said, going back to that quote about, imperfection, right? Just going for it, right? Like just doing something rather than trying to figure out the best thing. A lot of us suffer from some version of paralysis by analysis. And
Hmm.
I remember this being a teenager and like a young adult, even pre-cop career, just trying to figure out and read muscle magazines and try to figure out like how are you going to get jacked, how are you going to get shredded or whatever, right?
Yep.
Like what's the best form of protein, what's the best meal timing, what's the best workout split. It's like in my late 30s now, I'm kind of like it doesn't really matter. Like it's a lot of preference. What you do
Yeah.
could matter when you get into the upper echelon of performance or competition, whether you're
Hmm.
bodybuilding or whether you're a strength athlete, sure. But the thing is, if you're getting on average through the week X amount of output, X amount of nutrition for your goals, it's probably going to work pretty well, right, for your lifestyle.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, do something. And I love the um, kind of that trickle down you're talking about. The a shout out to Chris Luttrell. He's a recently retired cop in Washington
Hmm.
State that I know personally, and he put on this little social media habit stacking where basically it was kind of like you're talking about, right? That's what reminded me of it. Was maybe in the morning you just start off by doing a glass of water, and if that's foreign to you, if you just wake up and drink juice and coffee, well, man, a whole pint, 16 ounce of water is fantastic for your
Oh
dehydrated
yeah.
body. And then maybe the
Big
next
time.
day you literally do that and you do like 5 body weight squats, right? Or you go on a walk fasted, right? And so I love how you break that down to, it could literally be like something small every day or every couple days you add on. It doesn't have to be like some crazy like New Year's thing where, hey, I'm going to get up and do 2-a-days and
Yeah.
yeah,
Something that's you want to have the training program of, let's say, Arnold Schwarzenegger,
mm-hmm.
and it's just or Rich Froning CrossFit. I mean, they worked up to that point,
Yeah,
and that's what you got to do. You got to start small and enjoy the process.
yeah.
They say Rome wasn't built in a day, and it's not.
Yeah, everyone's so different. Speaking of Rich Froning, I remember specifically, for those that don't know, he was like the reigning champ in CrossFit Games for some time
Oh
when
yeah.
it got really big. And I remember looking up and researching what his regimen was, right? What his diet looked like. And the only thing I can find, I don't know if you know, but the only thing I could find, because I was like, hey, I'm not a CrossFit athlete, but I like to do hybrid training and I like to do
Mm-hmm.
high intensity stuff. And he's jacked and he's got, a gas tank. So why not?
Yep.
And all he'd really put in interviews was like, yeah, I have like a scoop of peanut butter maybe before a workout, and I usually do a few classes and do a couple workouts, and then at dinner
Yeah.
time I'll have food. I'm like, there's no way. And I just got frustrated. I was like, he's holding on to his secrets. Maybe
Yeah.
it's true. I don't know.
He was very unassuming. He's one of those guys, the genetic freaks that you love to hate. It's like, man,
Mm-hmm.
how come I can't be that way? But
Yeah.
yeah, Rich was amazing, and one of the reasons I got in CrossFit like 2014, and it was fun. But I noticed that it just for some guys genetically they can recover fast. For
Mm-hmm.
me, if I have let's say I'm doing a Murph one day and I want to come back and do another WOD, I feel wiped out. And some guys can do it, some guys can't. So going back to what you're saying, you got to find what fits for you and fits in your schedule.
Yeah.
You gotta be able to do something.
Yeah. And that's such a good tangible example too, right? Because, a lot of first responders, they like to be, once they get into it, they like to be active, right? They're goal oriented. They like the challenge, and that could be a very challenging, engaging environment, right? A CrossFit gym. It's like,
Yes.
but if you're trying to keep up with your buddy that works in software sales, no offense, but he or she may have a different stress level with the job, with her job. So just to be able to keep up with the pace of what they can put out, in
Yeah.
40 minutes, day after day after day might be very different than you, right? Maybe they're getting their solid 8.5 hour, 9 hour sleep a night. So yeah, it is super context dependent. And so again, I think it's a big theme. Like you just got to find what works for you and try something.
Yeah. And as I've gotten older, I've realized that I can't do those long workouts anymore. I got to get more bang for my buck. And I've always been an advocate of, Dorian Yates, Mike Mentzer way back in the late 90s, heavy duty where you're only doing, 30, 45-minute workouts.
Yeah. They're the high intensity training guys, right?
Yeah. Yeah. High
So for
intensity.
listeners, not high intensity interval training, which is like HIIT, which is, like doing sprints or doing a circuit. Now, do you want to talk about a little bit what they did?
Yeah. It was very unique because when I first saw it when I was 20, I went over their books and I looked at their program and I'm like, are you serious? That's it?
Yeah.
Because it was so minimal. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to try this. I'm going to give it a shot for a month and I'm going to go all out on these exercises. There's like 4 to 6 exercises in there. And the rep tempo was kind of unique because you're lowering the weight on the negative in 4 seconds and you're lifting in 2 seconds. So it's a very deliberate, not explosive. And as I tried it, I was like, man, I'm finally starting to make some gains. And I'm only in the gym. Some workouts were 30 minutes. And I'm like, I feel better. My joints are hurting, And, every time I went to something that was more volume based, let's say a CrossFit workout or I guess you would say traditional bodybuilding with a bunch of volume 4 to 6 days a week, my body began to hurt. I started feeling like, drained, like I couldn't, process things properly. And I was like, man, I got to go back to this. So that's what I try to get people out of is a lot of times less is more. the more quality you can put into something, just like anything in life, more quality, you get more out of it. And with exercise, if you push your body hard, you have to give it some rest. And in law enforcement, we don't need to do workout regimens that are going to destroy our body because we're already wearing 30, 40 pounds of equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Some guys are on SWAT, and that's more wear and tear on the body. So you want to do something that's going to empower the body, help it recover, help it get strong. And I can only speak what I've done. And that to me is probably one of the best programs I've ever been on.
Yeah.
So,
is that kind of what you deviate around now, doing, it sounds like, shorter sessions?
100%. Yes.
Yeah, higher focus on time under tension through the reps.
Correct.
Yeah, I love that. And that's a great example, right? Because let's just say for those that might not be really into weightlifting, the classic is, hey, do 3 sets of 10, right? So someone might put, a couple plates on the bar and bust through that 3 sets of 10. Well, if you're just, pushing it up and down and letting momentum do its thing, then that can put a lot of impact on your joints, right? Whereas
Correct.
if you're new and you're doing what Rod's talking about, maybe you could do only like 60% of the weight because you're lowering it so slowly, but your muscles are so engaged during that time, and you're contracting and you're working the slow eccentric, which is the weight going down. And
Mm-hmm.
so your total essential output can be very similar, but it might be way easier on the joints.
Correct. Yeah. And a lot of times you really don't have to do too much warming up because the reps are taking 5 to 6 seconds. You may only have to do maybe 1, or I would say 2 to 3 warm-ups, depending on how much weight you've accumulated. If you reached a point where you're doing 405 on a squat for, let's say, 6 reps, you may have to work up to 4 or 5 sets, and then that 1 set to max on the squats. But the main thing is always start your reps deliberately and under, I would have to say, strict perfect form, as perfect as you can make it.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that seems to, and you're going to find that you do that 1 set, doing it that deliberately, you're going to be sweating like a locomotive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're going to be in it, and it's your heart rate goes up. So there's also a cardiovascular benefit to it as well that I like. So yeah, one thing I've learned from doing this for 13 years is that the less wear and tear you can put on your body, the better your body can perform. And then that goes twofold with your food. I found that foods that don't take a lot to process, fruits, vegetables, proteins that are easier on the body. I know some guys that are meat eaters are like, oh, this guy's preaching vegan, but I used to be a big meat guy, eating red meat 4 or 5 days a week, sometimes twice a day, just to get size. And I found that, what, if I'm taking a vegan protein powder and eating more fish and egg whites, it seems like that my body processes that better. Less wear and tear on your organs too.
Yeah, it's such a again, a personal experiment, right? Where this and you can feel the performance difference, you can feel what it's like to digest this meal versus that meal, right? So that's huge. And it can be so dizzying looking at the fitness space and the social media fitness wellness space, right? Like, should we go carnivore? Should we go vegan? It's like, well, you do have your personal genetics, you do have your personal preference, and then you have your lifestyle, right? Which all interacts a certain way. And so, again, I love that we're already covering all these different kinds of options, right? You're talking about earlier, hey, maybe we just get a couple better options, like a protein bar and all this, so I can avoid the donut. Like, I think most people would agree, protein bar that tastes pretty good. Like, it's got a lot of them have some good amount of sugar. Yeah, but at least you get like 20 grams of protein, right? Versus a donut where you get like no protein and you're combining fat and carbs, which in processed food is, generally the red flag, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so no, I love that. So let's go on that. Like, do you have any other go-tos for people that want a tangible thing to think about? Like, what are some of your easy snacks that you might defer to if meal prep was a little challenging?
I found that, a Healthy Life has something called keto bread. It's a kind of a lower carb bread.
Hmm.
And if I'm working a night shift, or like tonight, I'm going to work a part-time job. It's going to be overnight. I'll probably take with me peanut butter and jelly on some keto bread, all natural jelly. Try to stay away from the high fructose corn syrup. I've had diabetes in my family, heart disease. So high fructose corn syrup is horrible for the body. It tricks your pancreas into secreting more insulin than it really needs, which is not a good thing. So, and maybe an apple. So the keto bread is kind of a lower carb but higher fiber, which is good. And I get my carbs from the jelly and the apple, and it's something that can be processed a lot easier on the body. And I know some people are like, "Oh God, you're getting all those fats," but peanut butter, nuts, those are healthy fats. They're actually good for your body.
Yeah.
It's something not to be afraid of.
Yeah. And have you looked at blood work to try to help you inform what to eat, or is it more off of your own, experimentation and personal anecdotes through the years?
There was a good book that came out in 1998. I think it was Dr. Diamo. Can't pronounce his name. He's Italian. I'm Italian. I should know how to pronounce his name. But he had a book called The Blood Type Diet, Eat Right for Your Blood Type. And I'm an O positive. So in his diet, I should eat more red meat and lower carbs and stay away from breads and eat more vegetables and fruits. I've tried it, and it was hard to stay on because I do like, my breads.
Hmm.
And I did lose some weight, but then again, I felt in my workouts I wasn't getting sugars.
Hmm.
Your body needs sugars to contract. So that to me was kind of a hit and miss. May
Yeah.
work for some people, may not.
Yeah. And I wonder
But
about that. Like, I'm familiar with that title. I looked up mine, so many years ago. And here's what I think. I think it would be interesting if someone broke down like a giant crazy graph or Venn diagram of all these diets, right? Um, there's the blood type diet, and then there's different kind of metabolic kind of diet, I
mhm,
suppose, prescriptions based on how your body naturally, metabolizes different foods. And there's
yep,
also kind of this idea of an ancestral diet, right? Whereas, my family being from East Asia might do a lot better with unprocessed grains or minimal processed grains like rice, right? My
sure,
my family's been eating rice for thousands of years.
yeah,
Why stop now, right? But other cultures are going to
it's good for you.
demonize rice. Yeah, I mean, it could be for sure. Like, it could also be terrible for people to load up on if they're not being active. So
Correct.
that you have red meat, or white meat, fish, and so the idea that different ethnicities ate a lot of different meats, right?
Yes,
People from Northern Europe eat a lot of red meat traditionally, right? A lot of big game and all that. So, but yeah, trying to find the cross section between all these things, but also that might have to do with, how often you work out and how
yeah,
much you sleep. And so, again, it just, yeah, we can look at these different books or whatever for ideas, but if it's not working out for you, then it's probably something about your life, and like, hey, just tweak it or just find what works for you in the middle.
correct. Yeah, and your exercise training program plays a huge role in how your body's going to process foods. If you are pushing yourself hard, your body's utilizing more nutrients better than someone that's more sedentary. So the training program is so important to the whole I guess trifecta of nutrition, training and recovery. And you make good. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, a lot of people from different areas, they don't like Asian. They don't have a whole lot of heart disease. They don't have a whole lot of diabetes. A lot of them, and I think that has to do with their lifestyle, their diet, and it's something that a lot of people should look into because obviously it works. You
Hmm.
know,
Yeah,
and
like, so to jump in, traditionally, yeah, and then there's a lot of material out there. I mean, hop on that Google, but in areas where it's industrializing and commercializing with,
yes,
you dropped the Mickey D's earlier, but I mean, there's a crazy stat with China, and as far as when McDonald's came in, and now they're seeing a lot of onset of diabetes even in their youth,
Yep.
right? We talked
Oh,
about diabetes
definitely.
earlier, but I mean, it used to be called it used to be called onset, like adult onset diabetes,
Yeah.
right? If you weren't
Yeah.
born with it.
Yep.
And now it's just called type 2, like, because kids are getting it, so they don't call it adult onset anymore.
It's unbelievable that, I saw somebody posted something on Instagram. It was a beach in the 70s, and it showed all these people on the beach, and everybody looked good.
Hmm.
Everybody had a tan. Everybody was happy. There was no obesity you could see, and it has to do with really the things we're putting in our foods. It's absolutely horrible.
Yeah.
High fructose corn syrup, artificial sweeteners. I know it's in America. It's so hard to get away from. But if you can try to get your diet, let's say you're eating 6 meals a day. If you can try what I call 80-20, 80-20, 80% of your diet being whole foods, and the other 20% sometimes you have no control over. If you can overwhelm that 20%, I think you're going to be all right. I know I've luckily, thank God, I've been okay so far. But I've been proactive ever since I was in my early teens, because my mom was a health nut.
Mm.
My mom was always juicing. Uh, she was always on infomercials buying the latest
Yeah, you're talking
gadget
about
for
putting
juicing.
fruits and veggies in a machine, not like a
Yeah.
not a syringe, right?
Yeah.
Super
Yes.
jack mom.
Yes. You know,
No
and
judgment, no judgment.
oh no, 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 no. She was a good Italian lady. Um, but she instilled that. I can still remember, getting up in the morning and seeing my mom jumping on a rebounder and listen to Jane Fonda. You
Mm.
know, and it was just one of those things where your past experiences has a big impact on how you live your life, whether it's going to be healthy or unhealthy. And just because live, you grow up in an environment that's not healthy, doesn't mean your life has to be that way, because choices are so important.
Yeah, that influence is huge, and I love that
Oh,
you
it
talk
is.
about that, right? Because there's a lot of folks that they think about it and they didn't have the best influences around, right? And so maybe
Yeah.
growing up, and again, not to cast shame or blame, but like maybe your parents didn't know better. The mainstream media certainly weren't telling us anything amazing. They're still
No.
throwing a lot of really kind of contradictory, confusing information, right? So
Oh, yeah.
there's that, and then your
It's
circles, like your friends and your colleagues, right? So if you're in a department where wellness is you know kind of either made fun of or not
non-existent.
even addressed, like it could be hard to be like, hey, yeah, I know there's that free food in the break room or that free McDonald's, but I'm eating this Tupperware thing. And
Yeah.
yeah, you could catch some shade for that, but like you got to know why you're doing it. You got to know you're doing it for the next,
Yeah.
for tomorrow, for the next 10 years, 20 years, so you can thrive in retirement, you can be functionally fit, all that,
100%.
right?
Yeah. And that's one of the biggest hurdles I see guys having to get over, because through the years they've seen me. It's like, oh, Wes, there you go again, that Tupperware. I'm like, yep, feels good, baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in law enforcement, there's so much you want to be accepted, that a lot of times you just eat the bad things to be accepted,
Yeah.
and you can't do that. You got to put your foot in your sand and draw the line and say, hey, I'm better than this. There's more of a universal theme to it. There's people I serve deserve the best of me, and you can't do that, especially when you show up on a scene, and officer presence is so important, and you look like you're out of shape. You look like you have a hard time getting out of that squad car. You go to a violent domestic, that guy, that person sees that.
Mhm.
So you got to set the tone in your life, and set it early.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like to, and I want to rewind where you're talking about 80-20, right? 80% of the time. We're not talking about being perfect. And
Oh,
I love also on your social, sometimes you post just like what you have for the day.
mm-hmm.
And for some people that think like, oh, there's no way, like look at what Rod's got going on. I was like, no, look, because sometimes it is PB&J, right? That's
Sure.
you're not going like extreme paleo where
Yeah.
everything's like,
It's
farm
not egg whites
raised
and
and
oatmeal all the time.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So like you got that, and you have some processed food, right? But it's just knowing that it's a tool and it's part
Mm-hmm.
of the whole package, right? You don't have to have everything prepared and refrigerated. Like you have some go-to things, and I just like that it doesn't have to be perfect.
No. And I think that's where a lot of guys get hung up. They see this and they think, oh, geez, well, I got to have protein, carbs, this, and it's got to be this regimented thing. When I would get ready for a bodybuilding show, yeah, for 12 weeks, it's pretty intense. It's very very regimented, but you can't do that 100% of the time. It's impossible. And it's plus it's a very bland way of living life.
Yeah.
I do like to go out with my family and we go to Olive Garden, and I do like to have a good meal here and there, and that's not something to be frowned upon. But you can't do that, day in day out. You can't have a cheat meal every day.
Yeah, you carbo loading on those unlimited breadsticks.
Yes, yeah, those are great.
Yeah, is it always a leg day the next day, or?
Yeah, well, I'd say it'd be a great day to do it. Mm-hmm. You get one hell of a pump. But yeah, life is a give and take, and you have to have some type of balance when it comes to your diet. And there's something saying you shouldn't be intense and say, you know what, I'm going to give myself, 90 days of intense work, or I'm going to cheat on my diet. There's nothing wrong with that. That's admirable, and you're going to get some great results. Because I think massive action produces massive results on anything. But you do have to give yourself somewhat of a break. You're not a robot. As much as in law enforcement we think we are human. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So you talked a little bit about how your mom was really into health. Is that something that followed you through most of your life, and as far as nutrition and athletics and all that?
Oh, definitely. My mom, my brother, growing up in the 80s, you had all these great examples of these hardcore dudes. You had Stallone, Van Damme, Arnold. I remember the old Solaflex. I don't know if you remember the old Solaflex. They had an article in Sports Illustrated that said, a hard man is good to find. And it was Kenny Norton, the boxer. And you just grew up with all these examples of, I want to be a hero. I want to be a protector. I want to be in shape. And, it gravitated in other areas of your life where I want to be in police work or be a fireman. I really didn't know what it was going to be. But, it took me a while to realize that, hey, maybe I should do this. Because for 10 years, I sold insurance before I made the jump to law enforcement. So it is a process.
Yeah, how old were you when you got started?
I was 32. In our area, I work for St. Joe County Police, and the criteria is, work for the county, you got to work in the jail first. Mm-hmm. So I spent time in the jail for about a year, and then I got promoted on the street in 2011. So I've been a cop ever since. So now it's been 13 years.
Yeah.
It flies by.
And from my recruiting hiring stance, I've said many times, I like when people do a different job or live some life before they come in, right? So just a little shout for those that are listening that are trying to come in and they're like, man, 28, I'm 34, am I too old? It's like, no, man, you're not. If you're taking care of yourself, right? And I've met many people in recruiting where, meeting in person, they're like, hey, Sarge, I feel like I'm a little old for this. And I'm like, you don't look like you're old for this because I know by looking at you and by virtue of your lifestyle that you could probably run laps around some of these 21, 22-year-olds that are testing because they're not taking care of what they need to, right? They're not.
Well, thanks, buddy.
They're not putting the right inputs in. So I like to do a little shout about that. It's so much more about physicality, taking care of yourself, and mindset. And then you're just a lot more mature. I've reflected many times and talked about coming in at 21. I definitely had a lot of learning to do. And luckily I didn't make bigger mistakes.
Yes. And we see that now. I mean, we've got a lot of kids that get hired, because a lot of law enforcement agencies now are trying to get more people because nobody wants to be a cop, and they're putting more money on the table to get these kids to come aboard. But the life experience I got selling insurance, dealing with difficult people, dealing with hard times because I was on straight commission, had to budget my money, all that was a huge dichotomy of success that led me to a path that when I got to law enforcement, if I was down 3 reports and I had another crazy call, I could deal with it. I had some life experience I could go back on and say, you know what? I remember when I was selling insurance, and, working 12-hour, 13-hour days, and I had to go on an appointment. I did all that. So life experience is huge, and not to knock kids that want to be a cop when they're 21, but you got to go into with things with the right attitude. And when you approach people, you got to give them the benefit of the doubt and listen to them. They say you got 2 ears, 1 mouth. We need to listen a lot more. And a lot of these young guys create a lot of problems for themselves because they don't talk or they don't listen. And the things that they do say create problems.
Yeah.
So, I was fortunate I saw the old guys, how they did things. And, that they were rough. But you know what? They listened. And they had a heart of gold. A lot of them did. And I think what we're missing now is a lot of compassion. Not to the point where, we want to give a bad guy deserves something a break, but knowing where people come from and showing some empathy, and it usually does a heck of a lot better job.
I think there is some silver lining there with the amount of scrutiny that we come through, where we really have to focus back in on like, hey, what is the purpose of the job and how do we show it best? And how do we show our good intentions that just can't be assumed, or maybe they won't be assumed anymore by the person that hasn't met you in their time of need. So I do like that you talk about that. There's definitely so many young people coming to the job that they've lived some life, and they or if they haven't had the most diverse of experiences, they have compassion, they have the patience. And I love how you even talk about that, right? We're talking about fitness, but just it's as a pillar of doing the job right. But man, it's so much more important just to hear people than to say something. Most of the time they know. And in a prior episode with Chris Nielsen, like an area cop I know, he's like, people don't need you to tell them like how rotten their day is, and you see that, right? You see that kind of that judgy, mouthy cop just spins people up. They're like, they already know. They're not on another planet. But it's funny. I'll share this little anecdote. But there's a dude that retired from my department a little while ago, and he was notorious from the the line guys just milking calls, right? And he didn't take paper, and he was just a slouch. But man, did the community love him, because he gave everyone the time of day. And so before one hears that and puts that in their pocket, like, no, it's just an explanation that there's probably a good middle ground, right? To hearing people out.
100%.
I never knew what he did to affect the situation, but man, the people that called sure felt like it. So
they felt great.
Yeah, man. Because he would just listen to them for like 40 minutes as the city's on fire. So
yeah, I tell you, it's always good to watch these guys that are, politicians in a police suit, because they're great, and people feel heard. And if you adopt some of that, and then on top of that, do your job, do a report, and doing what these people need to get some type of justice, it's icing on the cake. So what I tell a lot of younger kids, you got to create your own style, but number one, you've got to show that you enjoy doing this job. So much in today, and it's gotten out of control, is people love to be the victim. It's like it's like it's like a popularity contest of who the bigger victim is. And growing up, if you had something going on, you never really put it out there. You just you trudge on, and you show, and you be a good example. You be some inspiration. And I think that's what we're lacking now, is so many cops, when they come on duty, they just put everything out there. Everything they're going through, they're putting it out there, and no one really wants to hear that. They want to hear something positive. So I think if we could start being more positive, be something better.
Yeah, man. I'm going to connect a couple things. One, you're talking about a couple times we brought up like the 80s, right? And you're talking about Jane Fonda, the little trampoline workouts, and then talking about Sly and Arnold, like definitely the quintessential action heroes that I grew up on too. And it's almost like, man, we need to bring back this like 80s, make America 80s again.
Yes.
I was born in
I'm
'85,
all
so I
for
only
it.
caught like a little bit of it. But I think you could even bleed it into like the early '90s, right? Where you talked about victimhood, and made me think about movies, right? And Karate Kid, like, I grew up on that, right? Daniel's getting picked on, so he's got to do something about it, right? And
Yeah,
so you go through your battle montage and your training montage, and we
exactly.
can
And
all take that
Daniel
on
never
for
cried about
ourselves.
it.
Yeah, yeah. So I think the ownership is just what I really love about this conversation of wellness, right? Because the sky could feel like it's falling. It certainly felt that way, and some would argue it did. In these
Hmm.
like riotous, tumultuous times a few years
Oh
ago,
yeah,
2020,
definitely, definitely.
2021, and we're still not recovered from that. But like, what can we do? I mean, shoot, a lot. Like, we can't control the national narrative. We can't control what what our chief says, or what our sheriff says, or what
Correct.
the governor says. What we can control is how we do the job and how we show up. And so again, like, that's where I'm talking about. Like, literally, when you go to the grocery store today, or on next week, you'd start controlling that. You start
Yeah.
voting with your decisions of how you're going to show up and what kind of cop you're going to be on the day. We always talk about
Yes.
that call, that day, that really bad day, but how you show up changes whether it's a bad day or just a really stressful, crazy story that that
Big
happened.
time. Yes. Yeah, Eric. I tell you, that time period. Um, you know, a lot of guys were talking about how, I want to leave the profession. I don't want to do this, and we all got in this for different reasons. But when things are the worst, that's when people need us. That's when it's time to really do the job. And a lot of us felt like, hey, this is a great Stallone movie, Demolition Man,
Mm.
where he says they send a maniac to catch one. Well, here I am. I mean, here I am.
Call me
I'm ready
crazy.
to do the
Yeah.
job, baby.
Yeah.
you know, and so I'm really, I was willing to stand that line, protect the innocent people, because there was a lot of anger, starting with George Floyd, rightly so. I mean, I was never taught to do that. If someone couldn't breathe, I prop them up next to my car and say, "Hey, man,
Mm-hmm.
you need something to drink? Let's get you some medics." Go
Mm-hmm.
from there. But and a lot of it was justified, but a lot of it got hijacked later on by people that wanted to see basically communities in upheaval, and unfortunately, we were the ones that had to stop it. And
Yeah.
you know, moments like that happen. That's your time to shine and be a good example. So
Yeah.
there was a lot of that. But there was also a lot of guys that I felt like were playing the victim, But hey, it's what we signed up for. Let's do the job and show everybody how good we do it.
Yeah. And I've said numerous times, like, I don't judge people that left, but now we're at the point
No,
where, um, we're here, right? The people that are here, that's where I would agree with you. Like, hey, we gotta stop carrying around this victim sign.
yep,
We decided to stay, and then those people that are coming in have decided to join us. Like, thanks for reinforcements.
yeah,
And so, even like, let's stop fighting ourselves, because this is happening all over the nation, right? You're still catching up on staffing, but everyone's so freaking new that it creates a lot of work for the senior guys. But
it does.
I hear
It
this in my
is
own building. I hear it, with the guys I'm catching up with. They're like, "Oh man, these new guys and gals." But well, they're literally like your reinforcements, right? So you suck it up. It's going to be hard, but you
correct.
can do it.
Yes,
Like, you have a better shot at doing it now
yeah,
and over the next X number of years, because they decide to come into this job where a lot of us that are in it don't know, and they'll never know whether you would have come in or whether I would have come in at 2020, 2021.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, today, lead by example. There was a kid that I saw at the gym, and he was a county officer, and I was like, "Hey, man, great job. Glad you're here." And he was putting in the work and doing the job. And a lot of kids this generation, they like to play on their phones while they work out. And this
Hmm.
kid left his phone alone, and
Nice.
he was doing it. And it was, I think there are a lot of us older guys that lead by example, and I think some of these kids are seeing that, and they're saying, "Hey, you know what? I can do this too." It feels
Yeah.
good to push myself. It feels good to give 110%. Not be somebody that's just like the guy you were talking about that never did reports, but was really good to the public.
Yeah. I hope we have the swing back. As I bring the 80s back or things from the 80s, there are certain things that jump out at me. Like, I mean, there's retro kind of fashion, the goofy
Mm-hmm.
colors, the neon, right? But then there's also, I mean, look at sunglasses. What are they called? The
Oh,
Vipers.
those
Yeah.
face shields.
Yeah. Like that's super 80s, super retro. And then I
Yeah.
also like, you're talking about this young guy. There is a growing, I like to think, or I'm trying to pay attention to it, like this growing gym culture, I think, with first
Mm-hmm.
responders, right? There's some
Yes.
really good social media out there, but also I like the idea that, and when I see it, guys and gals carrying around a big old water bottle, and
Yep.
that they're lifting, they have a home gym, or they're throwing around some weights at work when they can. Like, I want to support that, right? Because you're talking
Yes.
about that modeling, you're talking about that leadership by example, but hopefully that becomes more the trend and the cool thing to do, and we just socialize it better. And I
Yes.
want to get to talking about that, at this later part in the episode, where I want to talk about what you think we can do to improve culture. I mean, you're doing your work. I'm trying to put out my message. What do you think are, and we're going to break it down maybe by individual and then, agency responsibilities. But what do you think some things are that individuals can start thinking about as we try to build this culture that most listeners are going to be pretty into it, right? So it
Yeah.
will be more constructive advice and thoughts for them to spread it amongst their crew or their team.
I think a big part. I'm a father, and I think it all starts at home. The little things, taking care of your family, supporting them, giving my boys the right ideals, leading by example, showing them that, hey, sometimes dads have to work, and I can't take you to Sky Zone or go outside and throw the football around. I got to go to work, and I think instilling that sacrifice that is needed. There's so much selfishness in society. It's about me, 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 and we need to get back to. I like to say, I guess, call it sacrificial love as a
Mm.
father, uh, caring for people, and a lot of times you don't get a return, but you do it because you care about people. And I think that starts at home. This unselfish attitude to help others when there is no return. Um, it's a lot of times I got to tell my stepdaughter, hey, I need you to do the dishes. You gonna get me something? No. it's just it's the process of you being a member of the family, being a productive member of the family, and you got to have some skin in the game.
Mm.
And I think if we can get back to parents actually parenting, we'll have a group of individuals that go out in the world and show that, man, responsibility is cool. It's cool looking, going out there and working hard and providing for your family. That's cool. And I think we've gotten so much away from that everything's this quick buck. You
Mm.
know, you see it on the internet all the time, YouTube. You're inundated with all these ads that, this guy made $30,000 in 1 month. You can do it too. You know,
Mm-hmm.
but it takes a process to get to that point. And I think this youth is not seeing that. And I know during the pandemic, it was, even 21, you had a hard time. Employers were like, gosh darn, we can't find anybody that actually wants to work.
Yeah.
And we had kids. This gentleman that ran a meat market, he's like, I had to teach this kid how to sweep the floor. And I was like, you got to be kidding me, And that goes back to, I think, that families, a nuclear family of mother and father teaching their kids the right things. And we got to make that cool again. And
Mm.
how we go about doing that is just, individually got to take responsibility and do that. Because, my God, this generation is our future. And if we don't show them the right things now, uh, it's going to be lost.
Yeah. Man, I love how you're talking about these big things, but it is so simple, and it starts
It
with you,
is.
right? It starts in your house. And so, I'm literally asking, how do we make individuals support a wellness culture in police work? You're like, fix your home life, right? And that's what I'm
Mm-hmm.
hearing. But I love it, right? Because it is legacy, it is tradition, it's teaching and showing the younger individuals how to live life, right? You're a dad, I'm a dad. And then absent that, it's mentoring, right? It's maybe finding people in your circles that I'm already talking to my wife about it. I'm like, hey, with our daughter, like we're going to be introduced to kids that have rocky home lives. Like I had a rocky home life growing up. My wife did too. And a lot of everything we do in life is trying to provide a solid foundation for our kid, right? Give her everything we didn't have. But with that, we're like, man, there's going to be some kids going through some stuff, and hopefully we can be a model to them too. Hopefully we can let our home be a safe space for them when it's pretty tumultuous at home. So, man, I love that, because it is so much of this, like, hey, beyond the job, it's just being like a community member, a citizen, just a member of this society. And that's how you put it out forward, right? You just do the best you can and be an example.
100%. And, parents got to get away from, I see a lot of this parenting where they give the kids a tablet and that's it, and there's no communication. There's no, hey, how's your day? What are you doing? There's no involvement. My mom and dad were up my butt a lot of times about what I was doing, how I was doing it, and who I was doing it with. And it's just, I'm that way. But we create more, I guess, little soldiers that are that way as well. Society would be a lot better. And I think people like us are doing the right things, because we're trying to get the word out there for social media and showing that, hey, you know what? You can be a dad, you can be a cop, you can have muscles, you can have a good financial life if you just take the effort and take the steps day by day and do them. And I think, and get away from this get rich scheme that we're hearing, that consistency and commitment needs to be placed on the high echelon in the family.
The meaningful things don't come easy, do they?
No, they don't.
Take investment, right?
Yeah, they take a whole lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
And getting back with agencies, I think agencies would do a lot more to stand by their officers. That's one of the reasons why I left one of my agencies. You just had this culture that when things got tough for the officer, they were walking away, and that's scary.
Yeah, you vote with your feet, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're out there doing the best you can do, and when you leave somebody high and dry, it's supposed to be a brotherhood, and it's not. And I think these agencies would find out that the public is not what the media portrays. The public really likes us, and if they would stand by their officers and wait till the actual facts get out, I think there'd be a lot more notoriety for the agency, and also a lot more legitimacy for what they're doing.
Yeah.
And that's missing. Agencies have gotten so caught up in culture, the culture wars, that they try to do what's trendy and cool instead of what's right.
Yeah.
We need to get back to doing what's right. We know what it is. It's just got to do it.
Mm-hmm. Again, man, you're going high level, but it's what we need to talk about, right? Like, how does an agency support wellness? And someone might say, hey, work out on duty. Someone might say, hey, like, get a collaboration going with a local meal prep agency, throw some food in the fridge, things like that. Like, cool, that's all awesome and kind of extra, but at the base, you need people to support you, right? We need officers to feel like they're in a safe environment to do their job. They have leadership that they respect, that's going to go to bat for them. And for people that are not in the industry, that are like, oh, okay, good old boys, it's like, no. I'm saying, like, when you're doing good work, or absent the actual evidence of bad work, like, no, like, support them. It's the same thing you want in any employer. And some people call it a lack of loyalty, with people jumping ship and this and that, more now than certainly 20 years ago. But it's prudent, right? Like, we gotta make sure that officers can do the job in a place where they feel empowered to do it and make their decisions, because they're putting a lot on the line every day they go out. A lot of split-second decisions with huge implications. And so I think in some ways, if it punishes poor leaders and rewards good ones by attracting those people to those cultures, and hopefully people taking notice, right? And hopefully those are learning from those leaders that are modeling appropriately.
I think a lot of guys that have this mindset that we have, I had it too, where it's like, I'm going to do my job and let the chips fall where they may, and I'm not going to get involved. But I think a lot of us now, we do have to start getting involved, whether it be supervisor positions or administration, because that's how we change this culture that we're in right now. Is we have to take a stand and get some of these old way thinkings out of the way, which what we're talking about isn't really old way of thinking. It's just being there for your guys.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things we've started doing where I'm working now, New Carlisle Police, is we do starting to have a wellness program. We're going to start with newsletter on a weekly basis, recipes that provide officers what they can make if they have an ongoing shift, food ideas, things like that, workout ideas, and really have more of a hands-on to say, how's your health doing? Do you want to lose weight? Do you want to put on muscle? A lot of guys ask me, Rod, how do I get to this level? And I'm like, well, sit down, let's do it. Let me show you. You cannot, when you have some success, you don't want to hide it. I guess you don't want to hoard it. You want to show other people how to do it because that can only make things a whole lot better. And I think a lot of guys are holding on to things that they shouldn't need to talk about. And one of the things we're doing now, as I told these guys, one of the things I want to talk about is if someone's not having success in their training program, not losing weight, they're not putting on muscle. A lot of times what helped me back in 2015 is because of midnights, because of the calls, I wasn't feeling very good. I was tired all the time. And I found out that healthy testosterone is between 400 and 800.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to see the doctor, and he's like, hey, he says, how come you're not crying? I'm like, what do you mean? Your testosterone's a 10.
Oh my
he goes,
God.
I don't know how you're standing. And after doing some blood panels, I found out my thyroid was out of whack.
Mm-hmm.
DHEA levels were out of whack. These are simple things that you can bring back with supplementation that can actually help get rid of the belly fat, speed up your metabolism back to where it should be.
Mm-hmm.
And as a man, testosterone is king. If you can optimize that to the point where you're at 25, 30 years old, you can only help you do the job better. And I really think that guys should take an active part in getting blood work done, checking your kidneys, checking your liver. There could be an underlying thing. I just found out I got kidney disease in my family, and my GFR was still in a healthy range, but it was lower than what I thought it was.
Mm.
So now I need to take steps to make sure that, hey, am I drinking enough water? I'm drinking a gallon a day, but is that enough? What am I eating that's causing this problem? So, law enforcement, it's no joke. You got to stay on top of your health, training, and it's not for the faint of heart. The more you can be proactive and like we said, do the little things, it's going to help the big picture every day.
Yeah. Man, I like a lot of what you talked about, and just to zigzag around a little bit, you're talking about normalizing the conversation of wellness, right? Like, hey, how are you doing? Like, how are your workouts? How are you eating? Like, or, hey, bro, you look tired. You doing okay? And it's just another step, and I think my department's pretty good about socializing peer support, right? This, how you doing? Whether you're a peer support team member or not, but just people check in, and I'm really proud of that. However, it gets really uncomfortable where some of us are gaining weight and this and that, but some of my best friends at times have said, hey man, like, you're not looking as good as you used to, or like, you're looking super tired. And I'm like, that is not a compliment. They're like, are you okay? I'm like, I'm not sleeping well. But it shows that they care. It's uncomfortable, but if we can break through that, really it comes from a place of caring. Man, how powerful that be. And then how do you normalize fitness culture better than people talking about fitness all the time?
Yeah, it is. It starts with being a friend. A friend will tell you the hard truth. They're not going to cut corners. They're not going to BS you. They're going to tell you how it is, and you may not like to hear it, but you know what? You got to hear those things. We don't have hard conversations anymore. It's like everybody wants to text, and everything is super cool and everything, but It may not be. And you may need to have that conversation with somebody, whether it's fitness or anything. We need to start talking to one another. And like you said, asking how we're doing. Hey, man, you better stop drinking all these bangs. Your kidneys are going to fall apart,
Mm. Yeah, your heart's
So,
going to explode. Yeah.
exactly. So, and why are you drinking those things? Is there something going on where you need caffeine to function? That could be some type of depression issue that needs to be addressed. A good book, Emotional Survival for Law Enforcement,
Mm-hmm.
great book. And it talks about something called hypervigilance. As we do the job, we're always vigilant. We're always looking around, and that can take a toll on our adrenaline, and really take a toll on how we are on a daily basis. The moment I knew something was wrong is when I went and saw the movie American Sniper. There's a part in that movie where kids are all going around, having fun. He's just sitting there looking at a TV that's not even on.
Yeah, that was really well depicted.
Yes, it was. And a lot of times you can have high blood pressure and not even know it because you feel like you gotta, hey, I gotta be strong for my family. I gotta do my job. I gotta get out there. And these are all elements that, as it states in that book, that you need to address, or your accident wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and you talk about getting your levels checked, right? Like, so blood work was a big wake up for me, right? I was so fatigued, and you're talking about low T, low thyroid. Yeah, I was there too, and so we don't get paid the best in this job, but generally our benefits are pretty dang good, right? As far as medical benefits for us and our families. So again, if you want to talk about the easy things to do, the little steps, just go check in with your doc, right? Go get your blood work.
100%.
Go get different panels, and that's how you can see if you have, some indicating factors towards something pretty extreme, right? You might be able to catch it, or you can optimize, right? Maybe you need to get your omega-3s, DHA.
100%.
And I curious what you think about this, whether it's getting blood work done or whether it's getting in the gym after being pretty inactive for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the real concern is a surrender of ego. We know we had to put on the uniform. We put on, we carry, as my wife puts it, or put it a couple years ago. She's like, do you ever think it's strange that you wear a bulletproof vest, like literally every minute you're out in public, just in case someone wants to take pop shots at you? Mm-hmm. I'm like, I mean, it's a thing. She's like, does that wear on you? And I was like, man, I hadn't really thought about it, but yeah, the fact
baby.
that, it feels irresponsible to not wear it. It is. And it feels irresponsible to not carry extra magazines than what's just in your duty gun, right? So like you have that dynamic where you have to be expected to show up and potentially go on a canine track or climb this flight of stairs in X number of seconds to save someone. It's very terrifying for, let's say, a lot of cops when they're faced with that, because you and I might say, hey, I hope I'm ready enough for the day. And other people might look at us and say, you should be fine. But it's not about that. And think about all the cops that are clearly, they know, and their buddies know, they're not ready for the day. And that's terrifying. And so I wonder if that is so terrifying that it makes them not want to participate in the, mat training at work, or they don't want to get in the gym even though the resources are available for them.
Oh yeah, ego is unfortunately a double-edged sword in law enforcement, because nobody wants to look dumb. Nobody wants to look stupid among their peers. And the ones that do take that step and look stupid are the ones that come out smell like roses. And that's the biggest hurdle we see. You see a lot of people, like they complain about, oh, I can't stand going to training. Well, why are you here? I mean, you got to train. We got to do hands-on stuff. We cannot just do in the like a school area. You can't go to a classroom all the time. You got to be hands-on. And if you can just let go of that ego, you'll find that there's something on the other side that's going to bring you a lot of success. And that's the biggest hurdle. A lot of guys, they can't get over that. They don't want to look stupid, and they feel like they're starting over. But look at it this way: if you don't start, you're going to be in the same spot you are 6 months from now, a year ago,
or worse.
a year from now. And if you start now, man, imagine what that can be. What I look at is when I've done bodybuilding shows, week one, I'm pudgy, try to put on all that muscle. Now it's time to refine and cut. Every week you set a goal. It's a minute goal. I might want to lose a half a pound or a pound. Okay. And you set how many calories you got to eat on a daily basis. No cheat meals. You've got to have a plan of action and execute that plan and not worry about what people think. You got to look at it this way. What I do in life is so much more important than what people think. And I have an obligation. I mean, what are your kids going to think? Dad, did you quit? Why'd you eat apple pie? I thought you were going to be on stage.
Yeah. People are watching,
or your
right?
wife. Yeah, your wife. Where's that six pack you were telling me about? And you're like, oh man, I mean, not only is it beneficial for you, but it inspires everyone else that, hey, this is possible. And I think that's what we need to start doing is instead of ego stopping us, what's possible? If I know, I guess look at it this way. If you couldn't fail, what would you do? Yeah, you do a lot of things. So you got to have that type of attitude, some enthusiasm, and let go of the fear. Ego brings a lot of fear. You got to let it go. That's the main thing. My mom, she was a fearful person, unfortunately, and she ended up getting kidney failure. Even though she was healthy, but she never wanted to drink all this water. And I'd be like, Mom, yeah, I got my jug here, and she wouldn't drink water. And, she ended up being on dialysis for 10 years. And it was a gut wrenching experience that I don't want to see anybody go through. But it's fear. It's fear of, oh, I don't want to drink all that water. What are people going to think if I'm drinking all that water? Well, what's it care, Mom, if it's going to benefit you? So unfortunately, that's where we're at. And law enforcement, ego can be a good thing or a bad thing. It can be one of those things that makes you not quit and go for it, or it can be one of those things that stops you dead in your tracks.
Yeah.
And got to be the former, not the latter.
It's hard. I mean,
it is. It's super hard.
So much, right? So much is, garnered around fear, but hey, if you're worried about being that guy or gal carrying a jug, just be proud, right? Like, recognize that there's tons of people, maybe not right on your crew, but there's tons of people throughout the nation or the world that'd be like, oh heck yeah, like I'm that jug toting weirdo, right? I'm that person with Tupperware in the bag and some electrolytes or whatever, right? Like whatever your thing is, like, and then before too long, like there's going to be someone else carrying a jug, and you can feel good that you helped pave the way for that because it is good for you, right? And this is where I want to highlight on after surrendering the ego is, hey, focus on self-care. Like recognize, just like we started this job, or just like we started this episode, you can't take care of anyone if you're not taking care of yourself. And that's operationally, tactically, that involves your physical ability, your mental ability, your emotional self. But ultimately, like, you're not going to be able to serve a single person in your family, in your department, in the community, if you're not taking care of yourself.
100%. Yeah. And a lot of people don't realize that, and they let that fear get in their way. And you can't. I mean, it's, for me, my attitude is it's my family. When it comes to my family or goals, it's life or death for me because we only get one life. We're only here for a small amount of time, and you've got to make your days count. You don't make, and you'd be surprised what you can do. Let's say, I've always got a great workout when I had a small amount of time to get it done. Man, I was laser in there. If I knew I had a part-time job and man, I want to do stuff with the family and work out or whatever, dude, I was laser focused. Can you imagine if you could do that on a daily basis? Because you got to have purpose and you got to have, confidence in your ability to do it. If you don't have purpose and confidence, you're not going to go anywhere with it. yeah, there's a lot of people counting on you in law enforcement, and guys that feel overwhelmed. Like you said, it's a badge of honor. Hey, a lot of people can't do this. We can. So go out and do it. It's not rocket science to do all this. It's just certain steps. I mean, I tell guys, for me as a kid, Bill Phillips ran EAS. This is old school. I know I'm aging myself here, but
I
he had a
remember
book.
EAS, but other
Yeah,
people might be
EAS.
like, "What
Oh
are you
my
talking
gosh!
about?" Yeah,
Everybody thought Phosphagen was steroids back in the day, but he had a book called Body for Life, and that book there's a 25-page chapter on nutrition that is just amazing. It's the most simplified version I've ever seen in my life, where you basically take a portion of protein, a portion of carbs, and the portion is the size of your fist, and that's a meal. And it's just that simple. And it could be, it could be a chicken breast, rice, chicken breast with sweet potato. I always like sweet potatoes melted with peanut butter. I know I'm crazy, but it tastes
sounds good. I can see it. I can visualize it, and I love peanut butter.
Oh yeah, I peanut butter pie, everything peanut butter. I'm there. I know my wife can't stand it, but I love it. But things like that. Be creative. If you really want to do something, that's the thing, is your creative process comes in. If it's a drudgery, and you're not even going to make the effort. But sometimes you need a wake up call, and a lot of times guys do get that wake up call, whether it be heart disease or diabetes, and then they're forced to look at things through a different lens, and sometimes that's what they need, unfortunately. But nothing. A lot of good comes out of pain. With pain comes a lot of good things. So, but yeah, that was man. If anybody can still find that on Amazon, I know I got it. It's a great book, and it's very simple. And it's what I try to instill to people who I train. A simple nutrition way of living your life. 6 days, 5 to 6 meals like that. The 7th day, go to Olive Garden. Get a Pizza Hut. Doesn't mean you have to eat the whole thing.
Yeah.
But get that release, that mental release, that you need after putting in the effort of doing it. So you got to have some reward factor there too with your fitness, that shows that, hey, I did a good job. I'm rewarded now.
Yeah. Feel good. I mean, see how your clothes fit, and it might not be overnight, but starting to feel a little tired in the shoulders and a little looser on the waist. Like, you're on the right track, right? Don't get distracted by the scale, especially as you're building muscle. Your weight might stay exactly the same or go up. So,
yep, scale is a fickle person.
Yeah,
a fickle friend right there.
Yeah, it could be a tool, right, alongside everything else.
It is.
But
it is. It can be a tool.
Fantastic. Well, Rod, really appreciate your time. We covered a lot of ground, and so just to kind of summarize, guys and gals, surrender the ego, right? Recognize what you might be afraid of, and just commit. Right? Start small. Start simple. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just start doing something, and you'll start building momentum. Rod, wealth of information. Where can folks find you?
You can go behind the drive. That's behind _the_drive on Instagram. I'm going to start doing some phone consultations, 30-minute consultations for people now. And my email, if you need to get hold of me, email, it's rod.wisser@gmail.com. That's rod.wisser@gmail.
Awesome, man. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Blue Grit Radio. As always, support this community by subscribing, giving us a 5-star review, and following, liking, and sharing posts on Blue Grit Wellness on Instagram. You can reach me there or email me at bluegritwellness@gmail.com. Be well and stay gritty.